Okay, so the Ag Advisory Committee meeting tonight on June 9th, 2025 will come to order. Corin's late, but that's okay. We'll let her off the hook. Wait, your watch is different, right?
No, it's just standing right there. Sorry.
Oh, is that how we do it around here? Okay. Well, I'll remember that.
Okay.
Oh, all right. So at 6:06 p.m. and let's do roll call. All right. James Oku, Natalie Sayre here, John Bars, Peter Markey,
Here.
Ryan Casey,
Here.
Paul Mazzaragio Sanastasio, Chris O'Shea here, Daniel Theobald
Here.
Eric Hagstrom,
Here.
Marilyn Johnson
Here.
Natural Resource Conservation Staff Jim Howard.
Retired.
Is he retired now?
Retired. I think they retired.
Okay, retired. San Mateo. All right, San Mateo County Ag Commissioner Corin Whittle.
Here.
Hi, Corin. All right, Farm Bureau Executive Director Jess Brown.
Here.
UC Co-op Extension Rep Dr. Igor Lafon.
He's out there.
He's out
Okay,
there.
yeah, I was gonna say, I saw him
That's
walking.
where it was.
Okay, he's here. San Mateo County Planning Liaison Olivia Boo.
Here.
Oh, he's with Mike, okay. Oral communications to allow the public to address the committee on any matter not on the agenda. If your subject is not on the agenda, the chair will recognize you at this time. Any committee members with something not on the agenda? Chair recognizes Peter Markey.
Yeah, they are, as we all know, that they're thinking about hooking up the CSA 11 water system in Pescadero to the Pescadero High School. And they're also thinking about having the fire station move over there as well and utilizing the CSA 11 water system. And then when Don Thorsday was first board supervisor, I met with him and his assistant, Sarah Rosendahl, and I asked if our property, Bean Hollow, that was adjacent to the CSA 11 water wells, we could be hooked up. And after research, they deemed that, said that it couldn't be hooked up because LAFCO deemed it for the township only. And and then so years later, they made allowances for the high school and looked like the fire station. And I sent a email to the Board of Supervisors office, and they sent back because it would have to go through LAFCO and it would be probably too costly. Well, as we know, the pipeline that's much further away at the end of the run to Pescadero High School is way longer than the pipeline, say, to my property. And I offered a substantial amount of money if they would hook me up. And I just feel like it's pick and choosing who they want to hook up to and who they don't. That's my opinion, and I'm following up.
Okay,
All right.
that's noted. Thank you very much. Anybody else on the committee have something matter not on the agenda? The chair recognizes Daniel Theobald.
Just a quick reminder, we have hundreds of redwood seedlings, so if anybody needs redwoods for planting and conservation projects, let us know.
Is your farm selling them or?
That's free.
They're free, okay.
And how would we get a hold of you? Email
I'll
or?
give you my email address.
Okay.
I'll give it right now.
Okay.
Okay, the chair recognizes Chris O'Shea.
Just a reminder, Wednesday is the 34th annual Bert Silva Golf Tournament, so if you have nothing to do on Wednesday, come see me. I'll give you something to do. Grab some golfing buddies too. Some golfers out there.
Where is it?
Half a day golfing.
Okay, on Wednesday. Thank you. Anybody else on the committee with the item not on the agenda? No? Okay, I have something. I just want to follow up again with Olivia on, the two projects that came before our committee recently that we were to vote on, and we determined, as the AAC committee, that we didn't have enough information, and they were to come back to give us more information so we could make an informed decision. What's the status on those two projects?
So Terra Gardens is currently now scheduled for August to return. And
Okay,
then I believe Marquee Guard is not, the time frame is not confirmed. But it's
Okay.
on, we're expecting it to return.
okay, but that project will in effect have to come back to our committee, correct?
Correct. So they are both expected to return, just the Marquee Guard is, the time frame is unknown.
Okay, good. There's just some concern about some of these when we ask for the, in the past, when we ask for more information, instead of it coming back to our committee, so we can make an informed decision, the committee is bypassed and a decision is made without our information.
Yeah,
our
it's-
decision. And I just want to make sure that doesn't happen in the future, or if in fact there's an intent for that to happen, that it's at least discussed with this. Otherwise, it makes us feel like we don't make it.
Correct. I understand. And I know you mentioned that last time and I checked back with staff.
I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So,
Can I add on to that?
yes,
Can we, will the applicants be here physically to present?
I
Can they
think,
be?
I think it's a good idea for them to be present, either in person or remotely, because they help address some, makes them available to answer questions if needed.
Right,
but your concern, and you had mentioned this last time, Marilyn, at least to me, outside of the meeting, was that you wanted the applicant to physically be here.
yeah,
So for Terra Gardens, the applicant at the last meeting was available via Zoom.
right.
Will that person physically be here?
So I can ask.
Okay,
It does have.
and then the other thing is, you had mentioned, and tell me if I'm incorrect, that you believe that it would be important for them to present like they had in the past.
Correct.
Presentation.
Okay, so the couple committee members requested that they present like they had in the past. Not the recent past, but in the past that was done that way, that a presentation, albeit a short presentation, be done with what their situation is and that return and what's the process?
Both of those projects will have very brief presentations.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, any other oral communications or anyone who is,
And
the public to, oh my God, I stepped out of line. I got ahead of myself. I'm so sorry. I'm a committee member and I skipped the public. So I'm gonna double,
We'll go back to it.
Okay. okay, Bo, I'll go back. I think we have a public member with his hand up. And I apologize, I skipped out of line. I put committee before the public one. Dante, did you have your hand up? The chair recognizes, is there anybody with their hand up there? I thought we had somebody here.
No, I don't.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, the chair recognizes Mike O'Neill.
I just wanted to let you know, because I told you I would follow up. Corin and I will be talking to the housing authority, which are the ones designing the stuff for the farm worker housing. Funding that was approved by the Board of Supervisors in May. We're having a meeting tomorrow
Oh, good.
with her.
And
So,
you're gonna follow up on the specific of
right.
what was it regarding if it applies to family members? I remember that was a question that was posed, or was it a different question?
It was just general
I think we're just
guidelines.
gonna get general guidance.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
And
To
we,
try to answer questions. I'm
Okay.
sure there'll be more questions.
Now, the
after.
one that Olivia, and tell me if I'm incorrect, Olivia, but Olivia let me know that the reason that we took them off the agenda this time is because she wants to make sure, which I applaud this decision, to make sure that somebody from that department will be here for the meeting that it's discussed, so we can ask direct questions directly to them. So, and then
Right.
she's hoping for August meeting, is
I
that right?
mentioned that to them and they seemed open to it.
Okay,
So-
good, fantastic. Okay,
I mean,
good,
they
good.
might do a Zoom, but, you know,
But it'll be right, I understand, okay.
yeah,
And, we
but
were,
they're still designing the stuff, so it's, you know.
right, of course, and that's great, because like she had, like Olivia mentioned to me, it just seemed like obviously important that the actual people are here that could actually give us the answers. So,
Right.
so I really appreciate that, so I think that's gonna be great, so thanks.
If I
Okay.
can tack on to that topic, so I had a late meeting actually internally in planning for that topic. And I had not touched base with Michael Neal yet. They told me, the Department of Housing, that they are planning 2 information workshops slash Q&As. And I believe it's one for June and one for July. The dates are still being ironed out. And it is open to the public. And I will forward the links as soon as they're available. And I did let them know that this committee is interested. So there's the option to for you folks to attend those sessions. They're 1 hour. And if there's more questions in addition to those sessions, then I can ask them to attend a near future committee meeting.
Okay, so you're saying attend those as just members of the public, and then if in fact we have more questions, you can ask them to address the AAC committee? So
Correct.
is their presentation or their information?
Sorry, if you can hear me, the video just froze on me.
Okay, I can hear you. And
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, it's back
Okay.
now. Go ahead.
So my
Can
question
you
was-
finish? Yeah, can you finish your thought?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So my question was, does that mean then that the trajectory of this has changed? And you're saying that we are to attend the meeting as members of the public? And if after we attend those meetings, we as a committee still have questions, then at that time we'll address the possibility of them coming to meet with us? Or are they still planning to meet with us?
The former,
Okay.
the earlier option.
Okay, I would, I understand what they're saying, but I would hope that they would still want to meet with us regardless, because an informal meeting with us would allow us to ask more questions specifically related to our issues as an AAC committee, as opposed to just a 1 hour session with other members of the public. So if in fact you could pass that along, and if anybody else here has any thoughts on that?
I would agree with Natalie. It would
Me
be
too.
Yeah,
nice for
very,
them to
very,
come.
very strongly, quite frankly.
When are the meetings again?
June and July.
Correct.
This month?
1 June and 1 July. It's still being ironed out.
Would the committee feel comfortable if I asked, if they would still keep us on the table to, plan to come to our meeting regardless of our attendance or further questions if we attended these 2 meetings? Okay, so is that, Olivia, can you do that? Ask them if they could still plan on meeting with us as they were going to do?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And just The tentative dates right now are June 26th and July 15th, but more information, confirmation has to come out.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so Olivia will send us those meetings and the information on the meetings when she gets them for June 26th, July 15th. In the interim, Olivia and Mike and Corin will pass along that we still are requesting that they come to our meeting as they were gonna do. Thank you. So now, is there any other members of the public with oral communications? That's not on the agenda. Okay, going back to committee members, because I know I kind of jumped ahead accidentally. I'm sorry about that. Committee member updates and or questions to allow committee members to share news and or concerns for items not on the agenda. We did some of them. Is there any more? Anybody? No? Okay. The planning and building department director's report.
Sorry, one moment. I need to switch gears here. Okay, so for the for the month of May, up to the May 28th, there were no planning agricultural applications considered by the Board of Supervisors or Planning Commission. There was one new planning permit for the Planning Agricultural District, Andrea Limos, for the address 12320 Highway 92. And that is for a coastal development permit, grading permit for one permanent farm labor housing unit intended to house 7 people. The approximate square footage is 1,736 square feet. Also a new domestic well, new septic, and new water storage tanks. And there is some grading. And I can confirm in a moment, once I look it up, at the time, it was not confirmed who it was assigned to. There were no new coastal development exemptions that were submitted during this time. And then the next meeting is going to be July 14. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is a presentation on the Brown Act. The presenter, Brian Petit. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Petit. Okay, and you are with San Mateo County Council. Thank you for being here.
Not that I know of. I'm gonna sit down if that's all right. I feel like
Yeah.
it's intimate meeting.
Hey, Brian.
While she's pulling that up, I'll introduce myself. So my name is Brian Pettit. I'm with the County Attorney's Office. I'm relatively new to the office. I joined in January after spending about 10 years with the County of Santa Barbara. So doing all sorts of land use work for them. So new to the county, but not new to the practice. Happy to be with you here tonight. I am assigned to advise the Agricultural Advisory Committee, and it's just nice to be here in person and to meet all of you.
Thank you.
I just as a preliminary comment, I could talk about the Brown Act for a very long time, and I promise to be mindful of your time, and I'm going to keep it as truncated as possible and sort of focus on the areas that I think are most useful to you. It does mean that I'll move kind of quickly, kind of stopping on the high points. But if you want me to stop or if you have questions, please do ask them. Sorry, Olivia, are you pulling up the?
Yeah, I'm about to
Okay,
share
sorry.
screen. Sorry.
I'll keep
One
stalling.
moment. Sorry.
I will say, if you have questions of a generalized nature, I encourage them. If you have a question that starts with, Commissioner Smith called me the other day and wanted to talk about XYZ. If you have a specific question, we can save that for offline. But if you have a general question, please go ahead and ask. Okay.
Okay. Are you seeing the screen, the correct screen address? Is the better? Can you see the screen, the presentation?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, great.
I
Is that, does it need to be bigger? Is that, can everyone see that?
I can see it. Thank you.
Just like it.
Try to expand it? Sure. Yes. Is it possible to?
What's the role of county council, in general, for those who might not know?
Sure. So the county attorney's office represents the county as an institution, right? As an agency. So our client is quite literally the governmental agency, the county. The county speaks through the Board of Supervisors. So that's our most immediate client. We provide a variety of legal advice to the Board of Supervisors and their delegated officials. We also represent the county in litigation.
Thank you.
Jim Fox still works on the county.
He certainly does.
Are you in-house or third party?
In-house. Generally, the advisory functions. Yeah.
Close out
Hey,
participation.
you can
Close
close
out
out the
participation
participants thing, probably.
on the right, yeah.
That might be the best we can do.
What about more? If you hit that more, and there's that little square, like it's like a cross. To make it bigger, no?
Olivia, are you still trying to enlarge it at all?
In the top right.
Yeah, I'm not seeing an option for on my end.
See that blue thing on the top right, and then just to the left of it, is that to make it bigger?
No, I don't think so. That's multiple screens, I think.
Yeah,
Or a grid or some, that grid looking thing.
yeah. Yeah, I thought I recalled that on my, you're young, Eric. You know that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess best guess is probably hit like Control Plus a little bit, just to like get rid of the gray space on the edges.
That's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
Control Plus, yes.
But
That's exactly
it is Adobe, so like, you know,
No,
it's
that's
low-
fine.
not high hopes that
Yeah.
it's functional.
You guys want
Do
to
you wanna
get
come up
closer?
closer?
Oh, I can see it. It's good enough.
That's a good idea to come up closer.
All right, Olivia, I'm gonna jump into it. If you can find a way to make it bigger, that's great. If not, we'll make do. So the Brown Act, I'm here to talk to you about California's open meetings law. It's been on the books since 1953, so it's been around for a long time. It is the open meetings law. I had a boss that always used to joke that it's not the California's efficient meetings law. It's really about public access. The legislature has weighed the importance of public officials' ability to gather information and deliberate candidly against the importance of public access to the public's business, and has come down in favor of public access. Next slide, Olivia. So this is the basic rule. All meetings of a legislative body of a local agency shall be open and public. As I said, the exceptions are few and narrowly construed. The way I like to do this is just to look at the basic rule, and then each of those underlined terms, we just sort of unpack it. So the easiest one is legislative body. That would be you, is the short answer. Next slide, Olivia. Great. So number one, the governing body of the local agencies, the Board of Supervisors, is a legislative body. So number two is you, any commission, committee, or board, permanent or temporary, decision-making or advisory created by a formal act of the local agency. The Board of Supervisors created your commission, which is a permanent advisory commission, so you are subject to the Brown Act. It also applies to some private organizations, but in the interest of time, we don't have to worry about that. You are a legislative body, which means that your meetings have to be open and public. Next slide.
Good question.
Yes.
Open and public, but does that exclude subcommittee meetings that are less than a certain number?
Here we are. Yeah. So there's two types of committees, subcommittees. You have what are called ad hoc committees and standing committees. And so what are called ad hoc committees are a temporary advisory committee composed of less than a quorum that serves a limited or single purpose. So we call these ad hoc committees. That's not a term that's used in the Brown Act, but it has to be less than a quorum and limited in time and purpose. You contrast those with standing committees, and those are Brown Act committees. So if you have, could you scroll down just a little bit? So continuing subject matter jurisdiction or a fixed meeting schedule. So if you have a standing committee that is not limited in time, and meets regularly, for instance, I heard you talking about, farm worker housing, right? So imagine you had a standing committee and you say, well, this committee, is going to be, it's going to meet regularly and they're going to meet about farm worker housing, and we don't have any plans to limit it in terms of, how long it's going to exist. That would be a Brown Act committee that is subject to the Brown Act and has to meet the open and public requirements that we're going to talk about. So if it's an ad hoc committee, limited in time, limited only has a single purpose, that is not subject to the Brown Act, but a standing committee is.
Like years ago, when we revised the Williamson Act. Yeah. And that was a limited time.
Right.
And we met in Redwood City, and there were 6 of us members, and do we have 13 board committee?
I think we had at that
We
point.
had to have at least 13.
Yes.
And we're
So that's a great example. So if you had 13, 6 would have been okay, right? And you were focused just on amending the Williamson Act provisions, that would have been enough.
Okay, so, what is, oh, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Less than a quorum, is number of authorized positions or filled positions?
It would be filled positions. So long as you have all 11 voting members, positions filled, a quorum is 6. So 5 would be how many could serve on an ad hoc committee without it
So
being.
no more than a majority of the filled position.
That's right. That's right.
5, is that what you got? Okay, good.
5. So long as they're filled, right? So
Yeah.
11 filled positions.
Go ahead, Corn.
And what about, non-voting members? Do they count in the quorum at all?
They are not counted towards the quorum.
So could they join in a temporary committee or,
Uh,
and does it?
yes, and we'll talk, there are special rules for standing committees. But they generally, we're just looking at the voting members for purposes of the Brown Act.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question was just to go back, and if you could define quorum as how many?
So a quorum is a majority of the seated members of the commission.
11, you need 6.
Okay.
So you need a 6 for a quorum, which means generally
If there's
5
11.
members
Okay.
together are not going to constitute a meeting for purposes of the Brown Act.
Got it, thank you.
Ad hoc, committee, subcommittee, 5's okay, and then you're gonna answer Corin's question if, like, somebody that's not voting could come out of that as well. Later on, you said.
Yes, so the answer to that question is generally non-voting members. So the members that serve ex officio generally are not counted for purposes of the Brown Act.
Okay, so in other words, so we could have a subcommittee limited, the 5 plus a few non-voting, okay, because they're not voting.
Yes, generally that's the one. Okay, any more questions on this slide? Okay, we'll keep moving, Olivia, thanks. So now we have to know what is a meeting, okay? So again, it's a majority of the members, so we said 6, right? 5 is okay, 6 are present at the same time and place. That is with the aid of technology, right? So email, telephone, chat, all of that. To hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action. I just want to emphasize how broad that is. That language used to say to develop a collective concurrence, and then the legislature broadened it even farther. You don't even have to be speaking, right? If you're all in the same place receiving relevant, like information that's relevant to the committee, that could be a meeting on any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. So for you, I came up with a definition as best I could. It's really any matter concerning the preservation of agriculture within the county, any matter related to the planned agricultural district. Try to define it as broadly as possible, but generally within your purview. That's really the scope of what you're discussing. So that is a meeting. Next slide. Generally, you don't have to be worried about individual communications, right? We said it's 6 people all discussing something within your purview. Next slide, Olivia. But there are ways that individual communications can become prohibited meetings. One is called the daisy chain, right? So that's where member A talks to member B talks to member C, and information keeps getting passed along until you reach that magic number 6. And at that point, you've developed an improper meeting of the commission. The other thing you have to worry about is communications through an intermediary. So this is called the hub and spoke problem, where you have, for instance, an applicant who goes to multiple commissioners and says, oh, I talked to member A, they're fine with the project, you know, so and so. And if you reach that number of 6, you have developed an improper Brown Act meeting.
Yeah, going back to what you said, meaning that you generalize it. If it talks about general agriculture,
Yes,
it's a meeting.
yes,
Well, it could be the same 6 people talking out of this room of general agriculture that has nothing to do with our meeting, but about our own agriculture and our farms.
sure.
And I feel that shouldn't be something just generalized, clumped in, that we can't talk business amongst ourselves and trying to brainstorm to utilize better fertilizer, something that doesn't have.
Sure.
And so it kind of, but you clumped it all in as was.
It's a great distinction. I absolutely take your point. The Brown Act does not limit your personal communications about your own interests and your own business concerns. Next slide. Are any other questions about serial meetings? Okay.
I have one,
Yep.
actually. The, having each other's individual email addresses for purposes of just, if I want to email her and ask a question regarding, you know, can you do this, that, or whatever, can we meet for this? That's okay, as long as it's not a group of 5 or more, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
Individual communications.
so there's no reason why we can't have each other's email addresses and correspond that way.
Yep.
Okay,
That, so long as they're individual communications that don't develop into a conversation among.
okay. And say that we needed to we wanted to let a few people know, as long as we kept it under 5 or less. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Isn't it also what she was saying, if she emailed everybody at meetings coming up, so she's not discussing business, that's fine too.
That is not fine. So let's go to the next slide.
If it's more than 5.
That is right. So there's a special provision for county staff communications. And so if county staff is, and I know that they do, right? They do this all the time. They will contact everybody all at once to answer questions, provide information. There's a special provision for county staff. And they can do that so long as they're not communicating between the commissioners, right? So they're not sharing information between the commissioners. So any email that's going out to a majority of the commissioners should not be coming from other commissioners. Any information that needs to be distributed to everyone would be coming through county staff.
Commissioners,
That's
And- that's us. So
Yeah.
that's us. So you're saying, I'm so sorry, I don't understand. So you're saying if I had something that I needed to relay to the other committee members and I gave it to a county staff, they can't then relay that to all the committee members?
No, they can't.
No, only.
They're the
Oh,
only.
they're the only ones that can.
Right.
Okay, got it.
She
Okay,
can't,
thank you.
she can't.
If it's for more
Not
than
giving
5.
Any specific about the meeting, she can announce that, a reminder about the meeting coming up tomorrow.
I would generally advise that, sorry, I'm calling you commissioners because you're agricultural committee. Do you have a different members? Is that
You could just say AAC members. if you want.
Members.
Yeah, we're.
I would advise that members never email a majority of.
A group. So always just keep it 5 and under for the purposes of how many people we have on this particular committee that are voting.
Yeah, we're under 6.
So, okay, so
Not
under
a ma-
6.
Yeah, not a majority.
So
Yeah, you
5 or
probably
less.
shouldn't even do it.
5 or less.
I mean, not,
Right.
Pretty much.
probably shouldn't. even
But
do
there's
it.
so many
Just
times
email
that it does sometimes come up, and so it's good to know, you know.
Yeah.
So 5 or less is okay. And certainly I do that for the subcommittee. So, and that obviously is 5 or less.
Less than
Okay, as long as it's less than 4. Okay,
Yeah, no, exactly.
Thank you.
Questions.
Sure.
So we have a lot of vacancies that last quite a long time.
Mhm.
So right now, we actually have 10 seated. So what's a majority then?
So for 10, a quorum is still 6.
Okay,
You need more.
yeah, okay. So 5 is legal? Like if there's a subcommittee,
Um,
because there's, I mean, yeah,
yeah, so again, for purposes of the Brown Act,
Yeah.
we're worried about when do communications develop into a meeting? Because if we have a meeting, we're gonna talk about what that needs. There's all these procedural requirements, right? So generally, communication among 5 is not going to be a
okay,
Brown Act meeting.
5 is okay. Now,
You know, there's a question of whether it's the best practice, right?
Yeah.
You know, generally keeping communications limited and you have the opportunity to share things in a public forum.
And if in
It's a great
fact
time to
we're
do it.
going to, there's been situations where we've been asked by applicants to go look at the facility in which they're applying for a permit for this or that on their farm or what have you, and that was okay and within this meeting to do so, do we then need to make sure that 5 or less go at any given time as opposed to everybody going at once?
So I want to coordinate with Olivia. That hasn't specifically come up in this setting, but generally, yes. The answer is yes. Site visits should be done through less than.
It used to. We
Okay.
used to have applicants invite committee members to their property to visually see for themselves
Mhm.
in person the changes or what the applicants are applying for. And it was very helpful.
Well, it happened as recent as a year ago on one
And-
particular project.
Well, on that one project, that was worked around, we had like no more than 3 members at a time. that
Right.
went there.
Sure, and like I
And
said,
but
I'm not
but if-
familiar with
But if
it.
it was on the agenda, like Mary said years ago, there were site visits, yeah.
Right. You could have a site visit that is a Brown Act meeting if it
Yeah.
meets the requirements.
If it meets the requirements, then it could be inferred that that is in fact a violation of the Brown Act because it's considered a meeting without the public attendance.
Well, we'll go through what all the open and public requirements are. There are lots of them and some of them preclude site visits to certain locations because they're inaccessible to certain members of the public.
All right, very good, thank you.
Okay, so we'll get to the next slide, which is the first one that I thought I was gonna need to spend a lot of time on. This is one that generally people want to hear about, right? So you say, well, you know, wait a second. It's anytime all of us are in the same place talking about something that has to do with our committee's business. So there are exceptions to the meeting definition, okay? So an open and publicized conference, so something that's, you know, of general interest to the public, an open and publicized community forum, right? Something of local concern, so long as it's open and publicized, the public has an opportunity to attend. An open and noticed meeting of another legislative body. So if you find, you know, that 6 of you are at Half Moon Bay City Council meeting, right? This exception might apply. A purely social or ceremonial occasion, if you go to, you know, say a county employee's retirement, something like that. Or an open and noticed meeting of a standing committee of your body. Those ellipses are very important. ... Next slide. You can attend any of these without being a Brown Act meeting if the members do not discuss among themselves business of the AAC other than as part of the scheduled program or meeting. And there's a special rule for standing committees, which is if you attend a standing committee that you're not a member of, you can only observe. You can sit there and watch them do their thing, but you can't participate at all. Whereas if you found yourself at a city council meeting where they were discussing something that was arguably within, you know, the purview of your body, so long as the discussion did not take place other than as part of that meeting. It's not a Brown Act meeting.
We had in the past that members might not go to like a city council meeting or a different type of meeting, but and then they announce themselves of who they are, and they said on this board, that board, ACC board, but I'm speaking on my own behalf.
Yes.
And they just closed.
Yeah, absolutely. That is separate from the Brown Act requirements. That is absolutely a requirement. It's in your bylaws as well. The only time that someone can go and speak on behalf of the AAC as a body, it has to be specifically delegated by the committee. So so anytime that you were speaking in public, you would certainly want to identify yourself and clarify your speaking. Keep going. Okay. People often want to hear about teleconferencing. So there's three types of teleconferencing under the Brown Act. There's traditional rules, there's emergency rules, and then there are these new teleconferencing rules that I don't know if but many public officials have heard of these, but I want to go over them because it's rather complicated and people often want to make use of this. So here's a traditional rule. The body can meet by teleconference, either audio or video or both, so long as all the votes are taken by roll call. Each location has to be identified in the agenda, and the agenda has to be posted at each location. And public access rights have to be protected at each of those locations, and at least a quorum, so 6, have to participate from within the county. So if you wanted to participate by teleconferencing under the traditional rules, you'd have to know far enough in advance that it's identified, the location is identified in the agenda, and the agenda has to be posted at that location that you're participating from. And also all public access rights have to be protected. So that means each of the locations, the public has to have the opportunity to be there. We're going to talk about disabilities, right? The ADA. You wouldn't be able to participate from a place that wasn't ADA accessible, et cetera. So the traditional rules are pretty demanding. Let's just check out the emergency rules really quick. And generally people don't rely on these.
Question.
Yes.
When we did field trips in the past, because it might be on a farm.
Right.
And it's not ADA accessible. Is that a problem?
So again, generally site visits are often done through smaller groups, right? Through less than a quorum.
We had in the past with the whole group. Now, say if there's a certain project I want to do at my farm, and it says I want to invite the whole committee to go ahead and publicize it. Let's be in compliance with the Brown Act, but I don't have ADA provisions because it's a private farm, and then it can't be held at that site.
The general rule is that the public's right to access that meeting across the board, which includes ADA compliance, has to be protected at Brown Act meeting locations.
You might not be able to have that because I don't have ADA.
I invite less people.
Yeah,
Or you
unless
have
I-
them come at
let's
different
speak.
times.
I know that.
Right.
I was saying.
But to have an actual meeting.
Yeah.
But-
To show, because that happened in the past years ago.
But the owner of the site would not be liable. It would be the committee that has to adhere to the Brown Act. And that would be a violation of the committee's doing as opposed to the owner of the site. Is that correct?
So basically, by not having ADA, I would have to have less than the quorum have to be private versus public. All right.
So hard to comply with the traditional teleconferencing. The next one is emergency, which I'll breeze through quickly. Olivia, next slide. So this is the one that everyone got familiar with during COVID, the COVID emergency. So generally you can meet without following the traditional rules, but you have to have a declared state of emergency. And the meeting would have to pose an imminent risk to the health or safety of attendees. If you ever meet under an emergency, this rule might apply, but ultimately you would be relying on the Board of Supervisors declaring an emergency. It's the next slide that generally is the most interest to people. So, sorry, it's not the next slide. Sorry.
One more.
You know what? Skip it. if there's an emergency, staff will help guide you through your emergency meeting. It's these new teleconferencing rules that are of most interest. So the traditional rules are really burdensome, but we have these new rules, and it allows less than a majority of members to participate remotely. And it's a little confusingly called just cause or emergency circumstances. Not the emergency teleconferencing, but emergency circumstances. Again, a quorum has to participate from a single physical location, right, where the public has the opportunity to attend. And then the agency has to provide notice and an opportunity for the public to participate remotely. Next slide. So what does just cause mean? Just cause is childcare or other caregiving to immediate family. If you have a contagious illness, if you have a need related to a disability, or if you're traveling on government business, you can participate through teleconferencing without meeting those traditional rules, right? So the agenda doesn't have to identify your location. You don't have to post the agenda at the place that you're participating from. It's a much easier way to participate through teleconferencing.
This is for each single individual person on the committee that would have that need to join the committee. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So
Okay.
you can participate via teleconference based on just cause or emergency.
Okay.
And so just cause is these four things.
Okay.
You know, it tends to be taking care of family
Is
or
there
if you
a
have an illness.
Specific time frame that the committee needs to be notified prior to somebody needing to attend for this reason?
And here's the process. The second dot there, you have to you have to notify the legislative body. You would be notifying staff at the earliest possible opportunity, is what the law says, about your need, and then a general description of why you need to rely on it. Okay. So that's just cause. Next one, Olivia, is emergency circumstances. So emergency circumstances, the process is a little bit different. If you have a physical or a family medical emergency, prevents you from attending. And the process for this one is you have to request, actually. So just cause, you get to just do it, right? You show up at the beginning of the meeting, you say, I have a contagious illness, sorry, I can't be there. That's why I'm attending remotely. But for an emergency circumstance, you actually have to request that the legislative body allow you to participate remotely. And then the body actually takes action to approve that.
And is a legislative body the committee or it's the governmental agency?
So the legislative body that is the AAC.
Okay, so then you would ask prior to the meeting, and how would you then ask the AAC, because you cannot collectively email them? So what would be the appropriate way to ask?
So it has to be on the agenda if time allows. But if it doesn't, you would just participate remotely, and that would be the first item that you took up.
Okay.
Would be there's been a request to participate via
Okay,
emergency
so if we have a
circumstances.
meeting and one of my members is remotely because emergency is more often than not, just happens.
Right.
Then that is, we put that to the top of the agenda and we do that first and we vote whether they would be allowed. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. All right, we'll just keep moving. Okay, and so that's right. So if you're using these new teleconferencing rules, you can participate. You have to participate through both audio and visual, right? So you have to have your camera on, and then what you have to do is you have to disclose at the meeting whether there's other people that are 18 years or older present in the room with you and what your relationship to them is. So if you participate remotely through these new rules, you know, if you have your spouse or someone, you would say they're in the room.
And do we have certain restraints as far as allowing them to continue with another person in the room or not? Or that we can't allow that?
Yeah, that's interesting. Probably not, actually. I mean, if
Probably just disclosure.
it's really just disclosure. I mean, that person would have the right to attend the meeting anyway, so I don't know that it makes a difference.
Okay,
In the
okay.
room. I mean, what this is really meant to get at is to avoid sort of secret,
Okay.
discussions.
Okay.
So those are the requirements. Last one on new teleconferencing rules has to do with how many times you can do this. I'm just gonna tell you what this says, which is you can do it twice per year. That's the rule. So it's limited. You can't do it infinite number of times. There's kind of some complicated calculations based on how big or how often you meet. Just know that it's two times a year, if you want to rely on one of these ones. Okay, moving quickly. I know I'm going over time here. Great questions.
No,
So-
you're fine.
Okay,
We have a
good.
lot of- this is needed.
Fantastic. So we're into the open and public portion of the Brown Act, right? So what does it mean for it to be open and public? So first of all, you have to have regular meetings, right? So your regular meetings, which is what you're doing here, it's set by ordinance or resolution or bylaws. You meet second Monday of the month here. The agenda has to be posted 72 hours in advance. And then any agenda item has to be briefly described. So that's the agenda requirement. Posted in advance. It identifies what you're talking about. Next slide. You can also have special meetings. So not a regular meeting, you have a special meeting, and it can be called by the chairperson or by a majority of the members. There's special noticing requirements here. You have to send it to the newspaper, and it has to be posted on the county website 24 hours in advance. Generally, you're going to be meeting by regular meeting, right? Yeah.
Well, what constitutes a special meeting?
Well, that's what you're
Not the
talking
next
about
slide.
something special. Well, no, it's not on the next slide. What makes it special is that you're not following the normal regular meeting schedule. That's what
Okay.
makes it special. So
Got it.
the only time that a special meeting would come up is if you had something, or
Okay.
if the board wanted a recommendation on something that had a very short time frame, you might be able to call a special meeting to deal with that issue.
Okay.
But generally, it's going to be.
Okay. Okay, something other than our regularly scheduled monthly meetings. It's probably a good definition, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
This is another slide that I would pause on and emphasize and state that this is something that comes up regularly for public bodies. So non-agenda items. The general rule is you can only discuss what's on the agenda, right? You can't go off agenda. You can't have conversations about things that haven't been identified on the agenda. That's the rule. These are the exceptions. You can briefly respond to public comment. You can ask a question for clarification. You did this earlier in this meeting, right? You can give a brief report on your own activities. You can provide a reference for factual information, or this one's really good. You can ask staff that an item be placed on a future agenda. So if there's something that you find yourselves wanting to talk about, the solution is to ask that it be agendized. That's how you.
Okay.
So oftentimes I'll give a report and there's questions that come up about it. And there's kind of a fine line, I think.
Yes, there is.
That we may cross, but so just no back and forth as far as the questions go.
Very limited back and
Okay.
forth. Very limited back and forth.
But I mean, your report is agendized.
No, it's not.
It's not.
Mine isn't. I guess I could make it agendized.
Yeah, so, and so that does help, but you do have to describe what it is, right? So you have to provide notice of what the report is. So you can agendize, you can
Yeah.
put it as an agenda item that people are reporting out on their own activities.
Mhm.
But if you wanted to have a discussion about any specific substantive topic that comes up in those reports, that still needs to be
That still needs to be.
Just
addressed.
separately agendized.
Wow.
Agendize it as the ag commissioner turn,
Yeah,
barring what,
I know,
whatever.
I don't really.
And then then the category under that, you just put gloom and doom.
Yeah, that's what-
Pesticide rules,
Yeah.
and that covers it all.
That would actually cover a lot.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Well, I've got two questions for
Yeah.
you. So firstly, in reference to what you mentioned on if you had to do an emergency meeting, I'm sorry, if you had to attend virtually for emergency reasons.
Yep.
And if disability was part of it. If a member called in for disability, but they didn't want to disclose,
Yes.
ADA says you don't have to disclose. So does this trump ADA or
No.
does ADA trump this?
Very perceptive question. That's like a level of detail that I was not gonna go into, but there is a specific provision of the law that says,
I go into detail.
that's
so
good.
let me
No, it's
know,
great. It's
Okay.
great. It's great. So that, what does it say? It's a general description. What does it ask for? A general description of the relevant circumstances,
Okay.
right?
So if the person says to me, it's related to, it's an ADA issue or something like that, would that suffice? And I would
Yes.
let it go with that?
Yes, there's, I mean, so like I said, the law actually specifically calls out, personal health information, that it doesn't require the disclosure of personal health information that is generally, confidential. And so I think a general description, yes, would just be, I have to participate remotely due to a physical disability.
Okay. Or do you, but
it's about-
somebody might not even say physical disability. They might have an issue with that because I know the ADA doesn't even require that. So can they just say an ADA issue? Because that's what under ADA requirements, you don't have to say what that issue is, whether it's physical, mental, or, whatever.
I think personal
That
health.
works.
Personal health,
concern, I
okay.
think is.
Okay.
You don't have to add the word disability in there.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Just health.
Okay, yeah, just because I want to be as receptive to that, should it come up from a member calling in, if it should come. And then my second
Yes.
question was, this particular, PowerPoint presentation, I didn't see it on the full packet. Is it on our packet that
I
was
know that,
sent?
I was gonna ask. that,
Yeah.
so.
It absolutely, can be distributed.
But it wasn't. Okay.
No, it was not.
Isn't there some sort of rule that, is the presentation about the Brown Act perhaps a violation of the Brown Act? Because I was told that there was some rule that that anything presented in a meeting does.
We're getting into the weeds here, so.
Well, it matters because
So, yes.
our, what we present as well,
Yes.
it needs to be held to the same standard. So
No.
that's why I'm asking you, doesn't
I
anything presented?
We're not violating the Brown Act, not violating the Brown Act. Right now,
But
it's
doesn't
just
it need to be given to the public in our packet prior to the meeting? Because if it doesn't, then that negates any responsibility we have to do it to be equal.
So currently, it's just a presentation that's being presented to the public. So everybody
Okay.
has the exact same access to this information, right? It's just a PowerPoint presentation that's up on the Zoom,
Okay,
if that's what
what
we're
is
on.
it that makes it better?
So the rule is,
Yeah,
any materials that are distributed
okay,
to the commission have to be made available to the public.
okay, so in other words, if you took this presentation and you printed it out
Yes.
and gave a copy to each one of us, then that would have to be in the packet prior. Okay, so then if our subcommittee creates a document to present to our committee members and the public it's presented to our committee members, but obviously the public is part of the meeting because it's a public meeting. If I'm not distributing it, then I don't have to put it in the packet prior to the meeting?
Well, again, it's what's legally required versus what's best practice. So if it's going to be distributed to the commission, again, I would defer to Olivia
But
here,
if it's not gonna be distributed, if it's just gonna be discussed with the commission, with our members from the subcommittee, and do I have to provide it in a packet prior to our meeting, is my question.
So if it's just a presentation,
An ad hoc.
Yeah, from an ad hoc meeting. Yeah, okay, so like, for example,
Give me an
if,
example.
Our
So,
committee then could get approval.
Right. Yeah, so what's the criteria that you would have to then put it in the packet? I guess, and what Crystal's referencing is, so in the subcommittee meeting, we've created the various items based on a recent AAC meeting, this meeting, where we took these items and we put them in a 3-step format for each item for the committee so then we could present it to the committee and let them know about it. So if in fact I'm not distributing it individually, do I have to then give it to them ahead of time? Now, we're gonna report that to the committee, and if there's anybody, it's my understanding, but tell me if I'm incorrect, is that if anybody doesn't agree with it, I'm sorry, we vote on it, and then if the vote is not to pass it, then it's gonna be discussed. Is it the very fact that it's voted on mean I have to give it prior to the meeting? Or does it not even have to give prior to the meeting because it's not being distributed? Because if it's just a distribution issue, then that's not something we were gonna do is distribute, because it just wasn't needed. Does that make sense?
I'm mostly following.
Okay,
And
Or we'll rephrase it if you need to.
I would,
but you're the Brown Act guy, so I wanna know from you what the rule is, whether we have to do something different.
Yeah.
That's fine, but it's like when you go to the doctor, you wanna know exactly what's going on. And then if he says, oh, it's okay if you eat sugar, more of it, then that's fine, but at least find out what the test results say first. Okay, do you
Yes,
understand?
yeah, again, the rule is
I like that.
any materials that are distributed to a majority of the commission have to be made available to the public.
If they're distributed.
But if the specific example that you gave, if you're developing a document that shows information that's going to be specifically voted on,
Mhm.
I would say the spirit of the Brown Act would,
What do you mean?
Suggest-
Spirit, like it's a ghost?
I,
Sorry. I don't know what you
there's a
meant.
difference between what's absolutely required and what's good practice. in
Okay, so
terms
it's
of-
not absolutely required, to then put it into the packet prior to, it's just good practice is what you're saying.
If it's just part of a presentation that's just being shown.
Well,
To the
we're not even,
public.
well, yeah, we could show it, but we were just gonna orally recite it.
Then no.
We don't have to put in the packet prior. Okay, even
No,
if it
you
gets,
just have your own materials that were not distributed to a majority of the commission that you're just referencing,
okay.
that does not need to be distributed.
Okay, and even if it gets to the point that if the committee didn't agree on it, then, and then we would have to vote to change it or vote to agree on it. That's still okay, that you don't have to distribute it. I was being a devil's advocate.
Yeah,
That's okay. That doesn't change anything.
Why would we vote on?
Well, it was my understanding from what it was explained to me about the Brown Act, from the governmental agency here, is that then we bring it, we report what, I can pull up my email. So I
You,
can
you report your findings?
report our findings here from the Hawk Committee. Okay, we report the findings here at the next meeting, and then we don't have to ask for input because the subcommittee, as I call it, that's the Hawk Committee, is the one that created that. But then we vote whether we're gonna all agree to that because we're sending it to the government agency. And if in fact, yeah, so that's why we vote. If we vote on whether we're gonna be sending it to the government agency, that's what it is. Okay, so yeah, so to answer your question, that's why, Marilyn. But if that does not have to go into the packet first, that's great, because we prefer that we don't have to do that. It's,
So the legal requirement, if the ad hoc committee is making a presentation, the legal requirement is that the agenda item briefly describe what is going to be discussed and what's potentially going to be voted on.
And briefly, not what we put together. We don't have to put a copy together to put it on the agenda.
Right.
But it would be agendized as that we're going to discuss our findings to vote on it.
That's right. And there's,
Okay, so
and there's
that's
no
what we say.
requirement to
Two
create a
sentences.
document to attach to the agenda. No.
would be
okay, so we
agendized.
don't have to attach that to the packet, to the agenda prior to the meeting.
And Olivia, are you following this conversation? I want to make sure that I'm not suggesting anything that's inconsistent with our internal practices.
Well, I'm not trying, I'm trying to find out what the law is first, and then we can discuss what in fact we'd like to do. Just like, you know, California, they always do that. No offense, California. Anyway, the law is here and then, hey, what's what I want to do? So do you see what I'm saying? So,
Okay.
so I want to know the law first, because that's why you're here. Otherwise, why are you here? Go ahead,
I
Mike.
think if you want legitimate discussion from your fellow committee members, you should type it up, present it to them to look and review before the meeting. Okay, if otherwise, it's not valid. Okay, you're not getting the input of the entire committee. Yeah, I think you need to print it up, agendize it. It's not that big an issue. Okay, because people will, if you're gonna go to the planning commission or board of supervisors, you will need to have something written,
Well, of course.
okay? And that will have to be voted on by the committee.
Right, of course.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not, right now, I'm just trying to find out what the law is, okay, on it, and then going from there. So, but I appreciate you saying that. Go ahead, Peter.
When Marilyn and I were on the subcommittee years ago, to revise the Williamson Act as well as agritourism. We went to River City and who was representing us was Tim Fox. And when we came up with our findings, we didn't have to put up our finished findings on the agenda. We just had to present it to the board, and then they voted on approval or disapproval. And so that's what we're talking about. If that same format by law is relevant.
What you just described is the level of specificity that the Brown Act requires. So it doesn't require each of the recommended findings be spelled out in the agenda. It just needs to briefly describe what the topic of discussion.
What's okay, like you said earlier. So basically agendize it that we're going to be discussing our findings so that we're there publicly announced, and then we can bring our findings to the table.
We don't have any, just so you know, Mike, we don't have any concerns over bringing it to the AAC committee. By no means, that's not the issue. The concern is that we're meeting a lot and we're really working hard on it. And we say, well, you know, quite frankly, only 3 of us show up, okay? So it's you know, you have to understand, why didn't we just do it all in AAC? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, so that makes sense. But, so that's not the issue, but what I want to know is the law on it. So that's, and then we can be like a typical Californian and break the law if we need to, you know? So, but let's know what the law is first.
And the law is any materials that are distributed to a majority of the AAC have to be made available to the public. And this presentation, I'm happy to share it with you.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll send it to you, and at that point, it'll become a public record that's also available to you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Justin.
I have a couple of questions, but you're not done with your report yet, are you?
I have a couple more
Okay,
slides.
I'll let you.
Oh, I'm
finish
so
and then
sorry.
I'll-
I thought you
and
were
then
at the
I'll-
end.
No problem. Maybe like 4 more slides. I'll go very
No,
quickly.
you're fine. You don't have to go fast. This is really helpful.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I would assume they do.
We already talked about this, right? Meetings have to be ADA compliant, which means we make reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. They can't be held at places that are inaccessible to disabled persons. We make the agendas available in alternative formats upon request. Next slide. So what rights do the public have at Brown Act meetings? Lots of rights. Have the right to attend without registering their names or providing other information, so the public can just show up to a meeting if they want. They have the right to record it, so long as they're not persistently disrupted in doing that. They have the right to address the body on each item on the agenda, as well as any other matter that's within the general purview of that body. Next slide. Always a good one. The public has the right to criticize county's policies, procedures, programs, as well as individuals, right? So they have the right to criticize employees and officers acting within the scope of their official capacity. And then this is the one we just talked about. They have the right to inspect and obtain agendas and any other non-exempt writings that are made available to the majority of the members of the meeting. So that's what we were just talking about, right? So if there's materials that are distributed, those have to be made available to the public. This last slide are the remedies. So a member of the public can bring a civil action to try to force the county to cure a Brown Act violation or to try to seek an injunction to prevent a future violation. There are attorney's fees available, so it's not cheap to violate the Brown Act. And then also there are criminal provisions of the Brown Act. It's a misdemeanor to have an unlawful Brown Act meeting. I want to emphasize it has this, we call it mens rea. It's there's this mental component to it where you have to have an intent to actually deprive the public of information.
Oh, good.
As far as I know, there's no
I mean, because I'm saying, I know I've been
unintentional, right?
That's why I'm saying
You
good.
most likely have not committed a misdemeanor.
Thank
I
you.
believe to date, there have been 0 convictions under the Brown Act, but they do exist. It's important to follow it. And that is the end of my presentation. So thank you for
Yes.
for bearing with me.
Thank you, Jeff.
It may not fit under the Brown Act, but I'm just curious what our responsibility to the public is with approving minutes of meetings. Is that something?
It's not addressed in the Brown Act, but it is addressed in your bylaws, I believe.
And do we have, I guess what I'm not clear about, because you sometimes get very behind in this, is there some deadline for approving minutes, or do they can just languish forever?
They can languish.
Okay.
I've seen them languish for.
Doing a good job.
Oh my gosh.
It's good to
For
keep up on them. But generally, no, I've seen them in other contexts fall behind several months.
And then the last question I have, I guess, and again, it's not Brad, but it's more your question from the council.
Sure.
How do we become better educated on conflict of interest in the meetings?
So that's an area of law that is incredibly complicated and nuanced in California. I always just anecdotally, I'm always surprised. I spent, a lot of time keeping up on conflict of interest law. And it's this body of law that applies broadly across California, right, to all county officials, all these different bodies. I don't know how the state expects officials to be able to keep up with just how convoluted all those rules are. The best resource I can provide is the FPPC. So that's the state agency, the Fair Political Practices Commission. That's the state agency that enforces the state's conflict of interest rules. They have lots of resources that sort of summarize the different areas of law. There's the Political Reform Act. There's the Levine Act. There's Government Code Section 1090. The Political Reform Act is really the one that is likely to be most applicable. And they have treatises and summaries. And I would recommend just going to the FPPC's website. And I think that's really the best source of information. It's not, I say that they're summaries. They're like, 90-page summaries about all the different rules. But they do exist. And I think that's the best resource.
Can you send us that one?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And that's the acronym is FPPC, is that what you said?
FPPC, the Fair
PPC.
Political Practices Commission.
Are you talking about things like, Jeff, like if we
I
need to
think so,
recuse ourselves when we're voting or
Right,
something
right,
like
right.
that?
I think sometimes it's very confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair political
Corinne,
practice.
question.
Or, yeah, go ahead.
So if we have an applicant come in and bring pictures, so print it out on a piece of paper.
Yep.
And they weren't in the agenda packet, how should we deal with that?
Good question.
They should be made available.
After the fact is
Well,
okay?
Well, they should be, they should certainly be distributed. They should be accessible to anyone who's attending
And
the meeting.
yeah, I
And they
guess I'm
should
just worried
be,
about this online stuff.
and they should be made available online.
So if they
As
didn't
expeditiously
put
as
them
possible.
Yeah.
online prior, like if it wasn't in their packet, but they're like, oh, and I have these additional ones, do we have to stop the meeting? Do I have to stop and say, no, that wasn't in what you put in the packet? Or is it okay to say, oh, thank you very much. Can you please provide those to our liaison to put after the fact or something. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. They would need to be made available to the public as expeditiously as possible. So that anyone who's attending should have the opportunity to access those. If you don't have a way to copy them or a way to upload them immediately, they should be made available.
And that's okay as long as we put it in maybe the next packet saying this was from the prior person. Because you see what I'm saying? The public isn't always here. Like sometimes they're online or do you know what I mean?
Sure.
So is
And-
it okay to allow them to attend the
Should have
meeting?
everything.
Or should I tell them, no, I'm sorry, you didn't have that prior? Yeah.
You actually guys are good. You print extra copies and I can go grab one. So
Right.
I think that's a simple.
Okay, so
We're saying
like, what we're
somebody
saying,
online.
The online.
right, if it didn't go into the packet beforehand and they bring it, but then there's public people online, are we gonna be in trouble because they didn't get it? You see what I'm
They
saying?
should.
Yeah,
Like one applicant brought in letters and
right,
passed them out as he got here,
right.
but I don't think the county had
Should
it
have been
ahead of
this
time.
back and then-
And of course, the guy thought I was being mean because I'm a
Well,
mean
no,
person, you
I
know?
think, I mean, that's the
Just
only
kidding.
example I can.
Okay, that was
now.
just, that was just, yeah, okay.
What could be done is
But I
if
didn't know
somebody
that-
snaps a
yeah.
picture of it and it goes in the chat.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be 72 hours ago.
Well,
So should we be,
so that's the agenda requirement. So
okay,
generally, and
but that's a Brown Act agenda requirement.
the 72-hour requirement is that an agenda be developed and then it briefly describe each of the items that you're going to
Okay, and
discuss.
that's in the Brown Act. Oh, that's briefly. So that is the out there for allowing them, maybe.
There's no requirement that every document relevant to that agenda item needs to
Okay.
be physically attached.
Okay,
to
so
it.
then we could allow that because the description is just a brief description. So we could allow that then. Okay,
Yeah, the Brown Act does require that they be made, they're distributed to the
Okay,
commission.
got
That could be made available to the public.
Okay.
The only point is that the commission shouldn't get stuff that the public doesn't have access to. That's it.
That's,
the only
that's,
thing
well,
matters.
that's why I was asking.
yeah, but if
So-
the public wouldn't have access to that.
No, that's
it
what I'm saying.
wasn't
You
in the
could just-
packet Before,
No, you can provide it,
after.
sure,
And
during,
that's
or
okay.
during the meeting.
If someone from the public said, what are you looking at? I can't meaningfully participate in this meeting without knowing what you, then yes, you would come up with a way to share that information.
Okay, I think I understand.
No.
You're just gonna hold it up like this. so they can see.
Now, what, are you an attorney within county council?
That's
Is that
right.
your title?
I am a deputy county attorney, yes.
Okay, okay.
And I'm assigned to advise. you.
How many county councils are in the county?
I think there are about 30, roughly. I'm not sure the exact number.
Corin.
How, if we need your advice, how would we contact, what's the best way to contact you? Through Olivia?
So you certainly can. That's, Olivia, do we have department, sort of norms for contacting county attorneys? Does that
Is it
typically
for
go
personal
through?
or for the committee?
For the committee.
Oh, okay.
I don't provide personal.
Sorry, you guys have to answer that. I want to be clear.
My
No, I-
understanding is that they have to go through planning stuff.
Okay, so that's no, but I just want to, I'm certainly available to help with,
We're both county employees, so we can, at least, I work for Ray Mueller, so I was told we just go direct to you guys.
okay.
So,
There's no legal rules on this. I'm mostly just trying to comply with.
I usually,
internal-
Okay, so
I didn't know you existed, so I go to somebody else, but whatever.
So I have a question. One of the things that I expressed, prior to this meeting that I hope that you were gonna be able to address is sometimes I'm not sure when we vote on something or when it's just like an oral discussion.
Mhm.
So is there some, what is the,
So,
so I know when, okay.
so the committee is subject to, parliamentary procedures.
Okay,
You don't always have to follow them. There's ways to have meetings without that. But the general rule is that any formal action of the ACC is done through a majority vote of its members.
okay.
So if you're going to take action as a body.
So if
it
we're
requires a-
agendizing an item, we all vote, correct?
Absolutely.
If we're tabling an item to the next meeting, or asking for more information from an applicant, we all vote on that. Is that correct?
A motion to continue requires a majority vote.
Okay, okay. And then it's, and yay and nays, it doesn't have to be a counted, hands up thing or something.
So long as there's no one participating by teleconference, it can be yays and nays. And then you just want to make sure that, the point is that you do it through a way that the minutes properly reflect your votes.
Okay, so then I would say afterwards, there were, how many yays and how many nays.
Or just, oh,
Or
there were
something.
two opposed.
Okay, like
Two
that, right,
opposed,
so then the
yeah.
minutes,
And
okay,
if it sounds real close. By name call.
okay,
That works.
okay.
Yeah. And then
Okay.
if someone's participating by teleconference, it has to be a roll call vote.
Is there anything according, right, it has to be a roll call, okay. Is there anything, and when you say participating, not a public member, but a voting member
Right.
participating?
That's right.
Okay, is there anything in the Brown Act that would be like something that we just absolutely can't do? How dare you do this? You know what I mean? Just
If you
kidding.
want an example.
Yeah, like what's something like, oh my God, are you kidding? You did that?
Oh,
There should
boy.
be,
I can think of so many.
Okay,
examples.
that's one, right?
I mean, I'll give you examples of like what I've seen in my career. How about
That's helpful if that's okay with
I've
that.
seen a meeting where, you're in the middle of a meeting considering a matter and you take a break for some purpose, right? And then a majority of members get together and continue the conversation before the meeting has come back on the record. Because they're caught up in the conversation and they want to, they have some things they want to get off their
So if
chest.
you take a break as the body of the meeting, like it's like, okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, then yeah, you're not allowed to talk about it during that break. Is that correct?
Not with the majority of the members.
What about if one person needs to use the restroom and they're in there, but we're all still here, we can talk about it. We don't have to wait till they come back.
So long as the person who leaves does not cause you to lose a quorum.
Interesting. That's actually really interesting. Okay, okay, good. I like that. Give us more if you can. He said he had some good examples.
Well, I mean, that's the best one I can think of. I mean, there's ones, people don't realize that, that emails are communications that qualify for purposes of a meeting. So I just shot an email to 5 other committee members about this thing that I know we're gonna be talking about. We didn't deliberate anything. We didn't, develop a concurrence on how we felt about it. I was just sharing information. I think that's another instance of, people inadvertently violating the ground.
What about if, now that we're online and the agenda is posted with the Zoom link, what if we don't have service? For whatever reason, technical difficulties, we can't get it up in public. Can we continue the meeting if we have a quorum?
So there are special provisions if someone's participating under the new teleconferencing rules or the emergency teleconferencing rule. If something goes down and you are required to give people that access, that remote access, you have to take a break to fix the technology. But if it's just a normal meeting.
Yeah, like all of us are all the members are present, but the public may have thought they could participate remotely, but
Their
weren't
internet.
able to because the internet here fails.
That's a good question.
So I can tell you what the Brown Act says, which is that there's special provisions for those emergency and new teleconferencing provisions that say you have to stop and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Those same provisions aren't included in the general Brown Act law. So
A general meeting.
right? So you certainly
Because I know
You'd want to exhaust.
Yeah.
You
not
want to involve the public in the ways that were identified in the
agenda.
in the agenda.
Okay, because I know not every commission has this
Right.
Zoom live link
Right.
to the public. But it's been an issue here and there, we have trouble with this and then all of a sudden it's kind of like questionable if we should continue or not.
The best practice is to exhaust your
Exhaust that.
technological know-how to try to provide
Okay,
the remote access that was.
Is there a difference if it's an advisory commission versus decision making? This is only advisory.
Right.
Ultimate decisions are board of supervisors.
So there are special rules for some purposes. For purposes of the Brown Act, no. The same rules apply to both advisory and decision.
to advisory and decision.
Yes.
Correct.
Can we just not have telecommunication, or is it a requirement?
So it is a requirement if you're for specifically the emergency teleconferencing provisions and for the new, what I call the new teleconferencing provisions.
So like tonight's meeting would fall into that.
Yeah, you don't have anyone.
Right.
Yes, that would not fall into that. The choice is made to provide that remote access to enhance public participation. But there's no requirement in the Brown Act itself that you provide.
I think we should not at all. I don't think this, I don't think it's helpful. I don't think ag advisory committees.
There were.
I know.
We moved it to make. the
One
time
is
bigger.
So they could still.
She has a
No,
news
Yes.
station.
There's 5
Michelle
people
Diane,
on one.
she's great. Michelle is great. Exactly, they could
They're
be
gone.
here.
Or they're gone. They
Right.
weren't listed just now.
That, I don't have any.
I have an opinion about it. I don't think. it
I mean,
should
I
be
respectfully, respect your guys' opinion about it. Can we vote on it or do we
So
have?
if you want to agendize a discussion of,
Yeah.
whether you should-
Let's do it.
But do we have the power to get rid of it if the committee agreed to get rid of it?
I don't know, this is beyond the purview of a-
Oh,
of a-
come
of a Brown Act presentation. So there's, if you go back and look at the procedural rules for any of these sort of, committees and commission, it kind of layers lots of different rules. So there's like, the board has general procedural rules that apply to every single county body. And then there might be, lower level regulations or bylaws. And so you kind of have to go back and piece them all together. I frankly don't know where the impetus for having remote participation at this commission.
Is it
I'm
the
sorry.
concern that it would limit access to some people of the public? Is that part of the reason?
No,
that it's that
There
it's
is no,
there
there
for
is no,
public? There's not
there
any
isn't one.
law like that?
It started because of COVID.
Okay.
I mean, there's a couple of things. I mean, I think part of it is the inertia of
We
what
can make
we
it,
got used to.
we
during
can make a motion,
the emergency.
Brian does all the research for us.
Well, what if,
But-
what if
but I
Let's
we,
agendize it for
let's,
next.
yeah, but what if we make a motion that we agendize it and Brian in the interim does the research and gets back to us? Because Brian looks like a guy that he just wants to dive into this, right? I could tell.
But I do want to emphasize that one reason that a lot of bodies have remote participation as a matter of course is because it enables teleconferencing participation by members.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's why.
So if you take it away for the public, then
Are we then?
members.
Are we
But
then?
I don't think any of our members have ever used it.
Well, no, but I mean,
Really foreign.
but I thought you guys
But
were talking
then
about the public.
You wouldn't be able to if the public doesn't have that.
If
Oh,
we get rid of it for public, we get rid of it for.
but if we
members.
get rid of it for public, do we get rid of it for members in the case of an emergency as well?
Yes.
So that emergency, okay, so that's the
That
kind of
takes
the
it off the table.
equality, right? And that was my only thing was, not that I care, but I'm just saying, is the reason because because it somehow keeps the public from being a part of it.
Let's
Do you-
just agendize it.
Okay, I move
So we
to
can talk about
agendize it for the next meeting to agendize. Okay, wait, Brian, don't say anything. Just tell me if I do this right, okay? All right, ready? I like that laugh. Okay, I move, if I'm allowed to do so as the chair, to agendize the discussion of remote participation in a meeting to the next meeting. Do I have a second? Is that right or
It
wrong?
was a great motion.
And I also, I believe this has to be run by planning management.
So it
The
would,
discuss the agenda sized item.
it would just be,
The
it would
topic.
just be a request to Olivia.
Okay,
to-
so is
to
that,
look into.
what is the agendized item have to be run by planning? Or is it the decision that has to be run by planning?
The decision.
The decision?
You would probably be eliminating anybody, like staff will not be able to come to this meeting via Zoom.
Okay, but hold on.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, but that's
Okay, we have to.
but we have to wait for the next meeting because we had a first and second. Oh, we didn't vote on it, so I can't say that yet. Oh, okay, Mike, you were right. And a vote. Wait, Mike,
No,
Ryan,
no, you need a vote. No, you need
I,
a second.
I second.
she seconded.
Okay.
So Marilyn seconded. All those in favor of agendizing for next meeting, say yay.
But,
All those opposed?
but this
Okay.
item, but this
Wait.
was, this item was not identified as a matter of discussion, right? So it's really just, the exception is to ask staff to agendize something.
That's what we just
That's
did.
what-
That's what we
Okay,
did.
well,
Yeah,
that's,
right.
well, that's,
Well,
that's,
Olivia puts it on the agenda anyway, so that's what we're doing, and then she puts it on the agenda.
Yeah.
If in effect, unless there's a reason that I would assume that they wouldn't want to or something, but she said we would have to get their permission not to agendize it. We would only have to get her permission for the decision. So if that's the case, then we're asking her if she doesn't mind writing it up in the agenda, if she's the one who does it.
I was just emphasizing that if you're, the exception is just to ask staff to agendize a thing. So if there's something you want to discuss, you could say, Olivia, we think it's important.
So
to-
we don't have to vote on agendizing.
Generally, you're not making motions and voting on things that aren't on the agenda,
Oh, very good.
right? So the idea is you would just, if there's something that comes up that's not on the agenda,
Oh,
you would
so to
say-
agendize something is obviously not on the agenda, because you're now agendizing it. You don't have to vote on
So,
that.
so you're generally not,
Ah,
typically,
Okay.
staff in the department is.
Give me direction to staff to put this on the agenda.
Well, what do you do in a
Yeah.
situation where,
But,
what
but
if,
they generally control,
okay,
like they bring items to.
Okay.
To them.
well, what if you have a situation where, say that some people want to agendize an item for the next meeting, and then say other people are in the middle of talking about it and they want to discuss it, but it has to then be agendized for the next meeting because you can't discuss it. Is that correct? Or how's that? What's the thing?
You're saying there's a current discussion about an agendized item?
A non-agendized.
You gotta put it on the agenda. for next-
I don't think that there would be a discussion
Yeah, you're
about. a
not supposed
to.
non-agendized
Right.
item,
No.
Because we only talk about.
Got it. Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Well said. Okay, thank you. I think I got it.
Well, we took about as much time
Yeah.
as normally would be required for a Brown Act presentation, so,
Well,
Thank
this
you
is
very
how
much.
we all get
Can
fired.
we all get copies of that presentation?
Yeah.
you certainly can. Olivia, do you mind distributing it to the group? It's been presented in public. It's a public document, so.
Yeah, would be great. Just email would be fine with me.
Thank you very, very much.
I'm happy to be here. Nice to meet you.
Okay, but wait, we have one more item on here.
Okay.
So motion to formalize the ad hoc workshop subcommittee. So basically, when a subcommittee is formed, the Brown Act requires, right, Ryan? A committee member to make a motion and take a vote to form the subcommittee. So Olivia said that we could do this retroactively because even though we discussed it last time, apparently we didn't vote on it. So,
Okay, let's do it.
so I move to formalize the ad hoc workshop subcommittee. Do I have a second? Okay, second was by Daniel Theobald for the minutes. And everybody vote, all those in favor say Yahoo. And all those opposed say no way, Jose. Oh, darn it. I was gonna ask Brian if it was okay it's okay if I say that?
You just have to clearly document the votes. I would recommend ayes and nays, but,
Yeah,
Keep it simple.
for
You're
sure.
so not fun. Just kidding. Okay, so yeah, so I believe it passed. There were no nays. Thank you, and I won't do that.
Okay.
All right, so do I have a motion do I have to move to adjourn the meeting?
if there are no more matters, of business, you can just acknowledge
Adjourn
there are
it.
no more matters and adjourn.
Okay, are there any more matters of business? Okay, Daniel, did you have anything? Okay, Marilyn, did you want to talk for a while? We got 20 minutes.
No, I'm good.
Okay, all right, a meeting adjourned.
Great to meet you all.